Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. So ever since Nvidia opened up support for adaptive sync monitors on Nvidia GPUs, I've seen a ton of comments asking me what FreeSync monitors I would recommend. I guess with FreeSync now working with GPUs from AMD and Nvidia, with Intel also to support it soon, people are looking at upgrading to something new. And the good news is Nvidia GPU owners can finally upgrade to an adaptive sync monitor without having to pay the G-Sync tax. I've done a few monitors in the past going over some monitor recommendations, and they have usually ended up as mostly FreeSync monitor recommendations because for a while now I haven't felt as though the premium for G-Sync has been worth it, even when Nvidia GPUs didn't support FreeSync. But this video is going to be a little different in that I'll be recommending a lot more products over many more categories, hopefully trying to cover what most people will be looking for. I won't be covering everything though. There will be a strong focus on gaming monitors because I assume most people after an adaptive sync display want adaptive sync for gaming. It's not really a necessary feature for workstation, creative or office focused monitors. So those types of displays, well, they won't be talked about here. As is the case for most of our monitor recommendations, there is also a strong focus on value products, so those that deliver the best bang for buck in any given specification bracket. I've also made sure that every monitor I'm talking about here supports FreeSync via DisplayPort, a key feature that's necessary for Nvidia GPU owners, as well as low frame rate compensation, a feature I feel is necessary for a good adaptive sync experience. As a quick refresher, low frame rate compensation, or LFC, is a technique that extends the monitor's refresh rate window from the minimum listed value to an effective refresh rate of 1 Hz. So a 48 to 144 Hz monitor that supports LFC will effectively support a refresh rate range from 1 Hz to 144 Hz. Pretty much all high refresh FreeSync monitors support LFC, but I've double checked for this video, and as a result, I won't be discussing refresh rate windows all that much. So let's kick things off with a look at 1080p monitors. At this resolution, there are a number of options, but most are either 24 or 27 inches in size. You can find some 32-inch 1080p monitors, but at that sort of size, I don't think 1080p is sufficient for a monitor. You should be looking at 1440p or higher. While there are three main monitor technologies, those are TN, VA, and IPS, we can rule out IPS for 1080p monitors because there aren't any high refresh IPS panels at this resolution. So we're down to TN and VA, and the choice between those two could depend on whether you want something curved or something flat. TN monitors at this resolution and size are flat, whereas VA panels are curved. If this is a big factor for you, well, I guess we're narrowing things down a bit further. The other big consideration between TN and VA comes down to color quality. VA panels have higher contrast ratios and better viewing angles, and some models are more color accurate and have wider gamuts. So if you can put up with the curve, all those factors will be an advantage. However, response times are slower, making TN the faster option with less ghosting and, in some cases, higher refresh rates. TN panels also tend to be slightly cheaper, although that depends on the model. So let's go through my recommendations. For VA panels, which I typically prefer over TN for the reasons just mentioned, it's a clean sweep for Viotech here. At 1080p, I'd recommend the Viotech GN24C and GN27C at 24 and 27 inches respectively. Both pack 144 Hz refresh rates and use Samsung VA panels, which are pretty decent from what I've tested in the past, delivering noticeably better colors than the TN panels I'm about to go through. Both options also great value. The 24-incher is just $200, and if you want the 27-inch model, that's going to be $240 US, which make these monitors some of the cheapest in its category. So these are my go-to recommendations for 1080p gaming monitors. However, some people might want a TN display instead, either because they're flat, faster, or cheaper. The best value options here tend to be the 1080p 24-inch 144Hz offerings. You can get an Acer GN246HL for around $190 US, which is a popular choice, but I'd actually sway towards the AOC G2590FX, while this panel is the same $190 on Newegg. The design is nicer, the panel is decent, and you get the bonus of it being officially G-Sync compatible. Of course, the FreeSync monitors I've already talked about will still work with Nvidia's GPUs through the toggle in the Nvidia control panel, but as the G2590FX is G-Sync compatible, adaptive sync will be enabled by default. At 27 inches, 1080p, 144Hz, and TN, there aren't any decently priced options right now, so I'd go VA in this category. The final consideration for 1080p monitors is the super high refresh category, so 240Hz. Personally, I don't think the price premium for 240Hz monitors over 144Hz monitors is worth it right now. You're looking at over $100 more for a small increase to smoothness at the higher refresh. However, if you are interested in this refresh rate, I'd look at the $300 Acer XF250Q at 24.5 inches and the $370 XF270H at 27 inches. Right now, basically all 240Hz monitors use the same AU Optronics panels, so there's no real difference between any of the options on the market. All right, let's move on to 1440p, and this is where the market really opens up a lot with a wide variety of options. 24 inches is the easiest category to make a recommendation in because options are limited. Here you're basically stuck with a TN panel. It's a decent TN panel, but it's still TN for what it's worth. Anyway, the monitor I'd recommend is the 24-inch 1440p 144Hz AOC AG241QX, which also has the benefit of being G-Sync compatible, and it's only $310, making it one of the cheapest 1440p high refresh monitors. I'm not sure how many will be interested in a 1440p monitor that's only 24 inches in size, but one does exist, and this is pretty much what I'd go with. At 27 inches, 1440p and high refresh, there are tons of options, including all of TN, VA, and IPS panels. Again, the choice between these technologies is similar to what I previously mentioned, in that TN panels are the fastest and cheapest, VA panels have the best contrast ratios, and at this size are exclusively curved, while IPS provides a balance of color quality and moderate response times while being flat. So let's start with the TN option, and this is the monitor you choose if you want something fast in terms of response times. Again, considering most monitors here use the same panel, I'd go for the Pixio PX276 if you can find one in stock at just $310. It's great value for these specifications, and I really do like the design as well. If you can't find one, you're probably looking at spending $400 on the AOC AG271QX, which, considering the price of VA options I'm about to discuss, probably isn't a good buy right now. VA monitors in this category have become extremely competitive lately with lots of options thanks to a price drop for Samsung's 27-inch 1440p 144Hz VA panels. The standout option here is Viotech's GN27D. It isn't anything fancy, but it offers basically the same feature set as other monitors around this price. At just $330 through Amazon, it's a great buy for a FreeSync compatible monitor from a brand I've tested. Again, this is the monitor I'd recommend for most people. While it is curved, it has better black levels than the TN option, and while response times aren't amazing, personally I choose colors over response times. One very important note here relates to the Samsung JG50 though. Yes, this is the same price at $330 for the same specifications and panel. However, Samsung has chosen not to support adaptive sync with this monitor, presumably to save a few dollars. Considering the Viotech option is the same price but does support FreeSync, this is a much better choice, even though it may not be as big of a brand as Samsung. 27-inch 1440p high refresh IPS panels are effectively a premium product as prices start around $400. The key benefit here is they are flat and in most cases have somewhat superior response times compared to their VA counterparts. However, unless you're a massive curved display hater, I don't think these factors justify the price increase, especially as VA panels also have deeper blacks for a superior contrast ratio. The Pixio PX277H is my recommendation here at $420, but the GN27D is overall better value. A quick note on 165Hz monitors too. Most of these options at 27 inches are G-Sync, so they carry a bit of a price premium, starting at $600 for an IPS version. Considering there is almost no difference between 144 and 165Hz in practice, the massive price increase over the cheapest 144Hz options is definitely not worth it. While not as cheap as 27-inch monitors, 32-inch 1440p high refresh FreeSync monitors are also a great option right now because I feel they're priced at an appropriate amount higher than the 27-inch equivalents. If you want the extra size, you can spend a few extra coins without it feeling like a stretch. At this size, resolution and refresh rate, we're looking at VA panels exclusively. However, the good news is there are both flat and curved VA options at this size. The overall best option in my opinion is the Pixio PX329, which is flat and supports up to a 165Hz refresh rate, though FreeSync is limited to 144Hz. Contrast isn't as amazing with this panel as some of the best VAs out there, but for $370 and without a curve, I think it's a pretty good buy. If you want a curved monitor, right now you're looking at spending a little bit more. My recommendation here goes to the AOC AG322QCX. Again, contrast isn't as good as other VAs because it's essentially just a curved version of the flat panel used with the PX329, but otherwise it's decent, and this monitor is available for a touch under $400. At 4K, there aren't many good FreeSync options. Every 60Hz 4K FreeSync monitor on the market does not support LFC, so I can't recommend them because the adaptive sync experience won't be very good thanks to a narrow refresh windows, typically 40 to 60 Hz. In these situations, you have to go with something G-Sync. For example, the 28-inch Acer Predator XB281HK for around $530 as a TN option, or the Acer Predator XB271HK at 27 inches and IPS for a touch under $700. There is one 4K FreeSync monitor I can recommend though, and that's the Acer Nitro XV273K, a 27-inch IPS panel with a maximum 144Hz refresh rate. This is essentially the same panel as used in the G-Sync HDR monitors, like the Acer Predator X27, but without the local dimming backlight and at a lower cost. This is a relatively new display, and it's not particularly cheap at $900 but it does offer both 4K and 144Hz at a compelling price, much cheaper than the X27 if you don't care about HDR, and it's better value than the 60Hz IPS G-Sync options I mentioned before due to its higher refresh rate. Next up, we have ultra wides, and there are lots of different sizes and resolutions here, especially as this category of displays is growing at a pretty rapid pace. However, I'm going to keep things simple here and stick to 21:9, as I feel if you're thinking of buying, say, a 32:9 super ultra wide, there are lots of compelling options scheduled for release later this year that I think are worth waiting for, either as they pack higher resolutions, higher refresh rates, or a combination of the two. At 21:9, the main size to be concerned with is either 34 or 35 inches, which are basically the same anyway. You can get 2560 by 1080 monitors at this size, but I don't think they're worth the price considering a good high refresh model is at least $400 as is. So I feel the best value is in 3440 by 1440 displays at the moment. My recommendation here is the MSI Optics MAG341CQ, which has an 1800R curvature, uses VA tech, and tops out at 100 Hz. This uses the same 34-inch Samsung panel as most others in this price bracket, and it's a pretty decent panel, undercutting 35-inch AU Optronics VAs and 34-inch IPS LG models by a significant margin while offering comparable image quality. The MSI variant is $480, and I think that makes it the best bang for buck offering. There are 3440 by 1440 ultra wides at 120 and 144 Hz these days, but we're looking at prices over $780 for these monitors, and I don't think a $300 premium over the 100 Hz models is worth it considering the relatively small increase in refresh rate. The final category I want to mention is HDR, because this is the topic I get asked the most questions about in our Discord community. There's such a large selection of HDR monitors on the market now. Recommendations for HDR displays are a bit of a hot topic among Hardware Unboxed viewers wanting to buy a new monitor. However, I've been largely unimpressed with FreeSync HDR offerings. The majority of monitors advertised as supporting HDR don't deliver a good HDR experience. Usually these are Display HDR 400 certified and simply don't offer much over an SDR presentation. It's really not worth buying a monitor with this level of HDR, especially if that monitor is priced higher than the competition. Of course, if the monitor still delivers a good SDR experience for a good price, it could be worth considering, but there's no reason to spend more only to receive crappy HDR in return. So far, I haven't seen a single FreeSync monitor that delivers a good or real HDR experience, so my recommendation right now is not to buy a FreeSync monitor for its HDR functionality. Yep, in my opinion, there is no FreeSync HDR monitor, whether FreeSync 2 or otherwise, that is worth buying because the HDR support simply isn't good enough. This is largely because there are only a limited selection of monitors that have a proper full array local dimming backlight, which is necessary to achieve the contrast requirements of a good HDR experience with an LCD panel. Outside of Nvidia's G-Sync ecosystem, FALD backlights are reserved for high-end professional grade displays, which tend to be expensive and not well suited to gaming due to limited refresh rates. I hope this will change in the future. I hope we get some decent, affordable FreeSync monitors with an FALD backlight that's suitable for gaming, but right now they pretty much don't exist. The closest to a good HDR experience you'll get right now is with Samsung's CHG series on the FreeSync side. However, as these are edge-lit locally dimmed panels, they're only semi-HDR in my opinion, not true HDR displays. Now, across these recommendations, I've mostly focused on quality panels with good specifications, and this tends to be pretty straightforward considering in any one spec category, most monitors end up using the same panel. In my opinion, the panel is the most important aspect to a monitor, which is why I'm comfortable recommending brands like Firetech that don't pack in as many features as, say, an equivalent Asus monitor. Things like cheap crosshairs, RGB lighting, headphone stands, FPS counters, and so on don't really interest me all that much, so these things didn't really factor in whatsoever. There are some reasons I would consider a more expensive monitor than those I listed. For example, if it comes with a height adjustable stand where the option I recommend doesn't, or if it's factory color calibrated. Unfortunately though, not many gaming monitors are factory calibrated. That's more of a professional grade feature. So unless you're spending hundreds of dollars more, you're unlikely to get a calibrated monitor at a good bang for buck price. That said, these are just suggestions and recommendations. If there's a particular feature you're after that my recommendations don't have, of course, just do your research, read reviews, because there are lots of other good monitors out there that I haven't mentioned here. And of course, pricing may also vary if you're in other regions like Europe or Australia. Because I've recommended a lot of products in this video, here's a quick summary that goes over everything with up-to-date prices as of this video being made. If you're interested in current prices, we have links in the description for that. Anyway, that's it for this video. Hopefully this has helped any prospective adaptive sync monitor buyers make a choice as to what they should go with. Seems like there's a lot of excitement in the Nvidia GPU owning community right now about having access to a wide range of adaptive sync monitors, which is always good. As always, you can subscribe for more monitor content. Consider supporting us on Patreon to get access to our exclusive Discord community, and I'll catch you in the next one.